There is an invisible war happening every single day, a war that most people neither see nor understand. This war is not fought on battlefields. There are no tanks, no missiles, no uniforms. But make no mistake, this war is far more dangerous. It is waged in silence, it is fought in the spirit, and it is real. Most people walk through life completely unaware. They wake up, go to work, scroll on their phones, and go to sleep, repeating the cycle endlessly. But behind the veil of normalcy, something darker lurks. This world is not just physical, it is deeply spiritual. Every room, every object, every decision carries weight, seen or unseen. And in this unseen realm, there are forces actively working to influence, distract, deceive, and destroy. Darkness is not always loud. In fact, it prefers to whisper. It hides behind what seems innocent. It masks itself as entertainment, culture, fashion, or art. But its intent is always the same: infiltration. Infiltrate the home, infiltrate the mind, infiltrate the soul, not by force, but by consent. Consent that is often given without even knowing it. Witches, occultists, and those who operate in darkness understand one truth most people ignore: objects carry power. They understand that through physical items, spiritual influence can be transferred. A bracelet, a book, a painting, a stone, these things are not always what they appear to be. Some have been prayed over, cursed, dedicated, or charged with dark rituals. Others were created for one purpose only: to be carriers of demonic energy. People invite these items into their homes, wear them on their bodies, and hang them on their walls. They think it's just style, just decoration, just harmless fun, but in reality they are opening doors that allow things in, spirits that monitor, influence, torment, and manipulate. And the worst part, they don't always strike instantly. Some wait patiently, gradually weaving confusion, heaviness, fear, depression, and division into a person's life. Suddenly, the atmosphere of the house shifts. Peace disappears. Sleep is broken. Arguments increase. Mental fog clouds decisions. People lose direction. Opportunities vanish. Nothing seems to move forward, and yet the cause remains hidden in plain sight, sitting quietly on a shelf, worn around the wrist, or playing in the background through a song. It doesn't matter how educated, rich, or strong someone is. Spiritual law works regardless of opinion. Demonic access is not based on belief, it's based on invitation. And these objects are the enemy's invitation into your space. They don't need your fear, they need your agreement, and every cursed item, every dark symbol, every tool used in witchcraft is an agreement waiting to be broken. This is why awareness is not optional. Ignorance is not safety, it is vulnerability. What you do not confront will eventually conquer. What you tolerate will take root, and what seems small today can become a stronghold tomorrow. The enemy doesn't need your full surrender to begin his work. He only needs a small opening, and most often, that opening comes through what you allow into your space. It is time to wake up to the reality of this invisible war, not in fear, but in wisdom, because when truth is revealed, power shifts. And once something is exposed, it can no longer operate in the dark. The key is to recognize the tools of the enemy and to remove them without hesitation. These objects do not belong in your home, in your life, or anywhere near your future. No matter how beautiful, expensive, or sentimental they may be, if they are a gateway to darkness, they must go. This is not superstition. This is not paranoia. This is spiritual warfare, and it is personal. Because the enemy is not after your stuff. He is after your peace, your calling, your family, your purpose, and your future. He knows he cannot take it by force, so he plants seeds through cursed objects, through unclean images, through music, through symbols, through anything you allow. There is no middle ground in this war. Light and darkness cannot coexist. One always drives out the other, and the first step to victory is recognition. Recognize what's really happening. Recognize what has been hiding in your life under the label of harmless, and prepare to take back what's yours, because the longer these objects stay, the more they steal. But once they're removed, everything begins to shift. Atmospheres change, clarity returns, peace is restored, purpose realigns, and what was once held in bondage begins to move freely again. This is the wake-up call. The war is real, the objects are real, and their power is not to be underestimated. But neither is your authority to remove them. They decorate walls, hang from necklaces, appear on t-shirts, and are etched into home decor. They are everywhere, so familiar that most barely notice them anymore. A triangle with an eye inside, a 5-pointed star, a crescent moon paired with a circle, swirls, spirals, serpents, runes. They are labeled aesthetic, cool, or mystical. But these are not just shapes. They are symbols, ancient, spiritual, and dangerous. For centuries, occultists, witches, and sorcerers have used symbols to invoke, direct, and transfer spiritual power. These signs were not created for beauty. They were crafted through rituals, empowered by words, and fueled by intent. They serve as markers, anchors that tie the physical world to spiritual forces. In many traditions, drawing these symbols was not decoration. It was declaration. It was summoning, it was access, and that access still works today. These symbols are not dead. Their meaning did not vanish with time. They still carry the energy they were birthed in. And when placed in homes or worn on the body, they do what they were designed to do: invite and attract unseen powers. It doesn't matter whether the person understands the meaning. Spiritual forces don't require your understanding. They operate on permission, and the presence of these symbols, knowingly or unknowingly, acts as silent permission. Some are disguised in plain sight, masquerading as part of pop culture, music logos, or fashion trends. Others are woven into yoga practices, meditation products, or crystal sets. The all-seeing eye, for example, once used in ancient Egyptian magic to invoke hidden knowledge, now appears on posters, clothing, and even jewelry under the label of spiritual awakening. But what it truly awakens is spiritual confusion and infiltration. It opens the soul to voices that do not belong. The pentagram, often glamorized in shows and witch-themed merchandise, is not just a 5-pointed star. It is one of the most powerful occult symbols, used to summon spirits, cast protection spells, and mark allegiance to darkness. Its presence in a home, whether in art or accessories, becomes a magnet for the demonic. Symbols are spiritual codes. They carry intent. They echo frequencies. They link the physical to the supernatural. They are the language of the spirit world, and when they are welcomed into your life, that language begins to speak into your atmosphere. It changes the mood of a room. It stirs emotional unrest. It draws attention from entities you never invited, and slowly, subtly, the darkness spreads. People often wonder why anxiety suddenly spikes in certain rooms, why nightmares persist, why their homes feel heavy, tense, or unwelcoming. The answer may be hanging silently on a wall or carved into a small piece of jewelry. These objects are not passive. They are active agents, tools used to carry spiritual presence into physical places. And their power doesn't fade because they were bought in a store or came with no explanation. In fact, the ignorance of their meaning is often part of the plan, because what better way to smuggle spiritual corruption than to cloak it in fashion, art, and trend? The enemy's greatest trick is not to frighten, but to blend in, to be accepted, to be invited. That is why it is crucial to examine everything, not with paranoia but with discernment. What hangs on the walls of your home? What symbols do you wear on your clothing? What icons have found their way into your space, your accessories, your everyday environment? Every item carries a spirit, either one of truth or one of deception. There is no neutrality. There is no such thing as just a design when it comes to spiritual symbols born from witchcraft and darkness. What was used in rituals centuries ago still works today, because spirits do not age and their assignments do not expire. It's time to walk through your home, your belongings, and your life with open eyes. Examine every piece of art, every trinket, every symbol. Ask, where did this come from? What does this mean? Who used this, and for what purpose? And if the answer points to anything rooted in witchcraft, mysticism, or dark rituals, it must be removed. Immediately and without apology. These symbols are not your style, they are your sabotage. They don't express your personality, they suppress your peace. They were never meant to inspire, they were meant to infiltrate. What you allow visually will take root spiritually, and what takes root will grow into heaviness, confusion, distraction, or even torment. Remove the symbols, clean the atmosphere, shut the door that was never meant to be opened. Because once the symbols are gone, the spirits that came with them lose their hold, and in that moment, peace begins to return. Light begins to reign, and what was once confused becomes clear again. There is a lie that has traveled through generations, cultures, and civilizations. A lie that wraps itself in gold, in thread, in beads, in feathers, and in stones. A lie that says a small object, worn on the body, hidden under a pillow, or hung in a room, can protect, guide, or bless. These are the so-called lucky charms and talismans. They come in many forms: bracelets to ward off evil, necklaces to attract wealth, pendants to balance energy, and beads to invite love or success. But beneath their beauty and ancient designs lies a truth few dare to face. These objects are not lucky. They are cursed. Talismans and charms have never been about chance. They are spiritual contracts, crafted to connect the natural world with the supernatural realm. They originate from systems rooted in sorcery, shamanism, and witchcraft. Whether called by modern names or cloaked in cultural traditions, their purpose remains unchanged. They are physical tools used to attract spiritual power. But the power they attract does not come from light. Each charm carries intention, crafted not only by the hands of the artisan, but often by the hands of those who perform rituals over them. Words are spoken. Energies are invoked. Spirits are assigned. Some are even created during moon phases or with blood, herbs, or ashes to activate them. These objects are not just handmade, they are spiritually marked. And when worn or kept, they become a spiritual link between the wearer and the force behind the item. People often wear these charms hoping for protection. They seek safety from the evil eye, from bad luck, from misfortune. But what they receive instead is bondage. Because the moment someone turns to a charm for protection, they turn away from true spiritual authority. They trade divine security for demonic interference. And what looks like a shield quickly becomes a snare. Many don't even realize the origin of what they carry. Red strings from Kabbalistic rituals, evil eye amulets from Mediterranean witchcraft, dream catchers from tribal spiritualism, horseshoes nailed above doors, coins carried in pockets, crystals hung from car mirrors, all designed to manipulate fate, energy, or spiritual influence. Yet none of these come from truth. All of them invite deception. The deception is subtle. Someone begins to feel uneasy without their charm. They believe it protects them from danger. They won't leave the house without it. They begin to attribute every good or bad event to whether they had the charm with them. That's not protection. That's spiritual dependency. And spiritual dependency on anything other than truth creates a legal right for darkness to remain. The power of a charm is not in the material, it's in the agreement. When someone believes in the power of the object, they empower it. Their faith fuels its function. That's how curses are activated. Because faith is a spiritual force, and when placed in a cursed object, it binds the heart to the spirit behind it, and it doesn't stop with the person wearing it. These objects radiate spiritual influence. They shift the atmosphere of homes. They invite restlessness, fear, conflict, and confusion. They affect children's sleep. They attract nightmares. They create invisible pressure in rooms. And worst of all, they open the door for more. More objects, more beliefs, more darkness dressed in light. Even charms bought as gifts can carry attachments. It doesn't matter how expensive, how sentimental, or how traditional it is. If it was created as a spiritual object outside the truth, it becomes a cursed item. And cursed items do not bless. They burden, they weigh down, they poison atmospheres and block breakthrough. It's time to stop asking whether it looks harmless. The real question is, what spirit is attached to this? What tradition did it come from? What purpose was it created for? Who held it before it came into your possession? Every object has a history, and some histories carry spiritual residue that transfers through touch, through presence, through agreement. Removing these items may feel difficult. Sentimental value, culture, or fear of what might happen without them can keep people clinging to their chains. But that's how the enemy works. He makes people afraid to be free. He convinces them that without these objects, life will fall apart, but the opposite is true. It's because of these objects that things fall apart. The moment they are removed, the curse begins to break. The power of darkness weakens. The door to spiritual oppression starts to close. What once held fear now gives way to peace. What once clouded the mind begins to lift. That's the power of spiritual cleansing, reclaiming what was always meant to be free. Lucky charms are not luck. They are loaded with influence, deception, and weight. They offer nothing lasting and cost more than they seem. It's time to break their power, cut the string, burn the token. Throw out the bead, the stone, the coin, the carving. Deny the agreement, cancel the belief, and shut the door to every lying spirit behind them. Freedom starts when dependency ends, and freedom is waiting, on the other side of obedience. Sound has power. It can lift spirits or break them. It can bring peace or call in chaos. In the spiritual realm, sound is more than just entertainment. It is a weapon, a vehicle, a portal. Frequencies carry vibrations, and vibrations affect the atmosphere. Music is not neutral, it carries a spirit. Every beat, every word, every melody is either building you or breaking you. The question is not whether music is powerful, the question is, what power is it carrying? Many songs today are crafted not just with talent, but with intentions. Spiritual intention. There are entire industries that understand the hidden influence of sound. They know how certain frequencies affect the mind, how certain lyrics shape emotion, how certain instruments create spiritual vulnerability. These sounds don't just entertain, they enter. They get into the mind, the body, the spirit. And once they're in, they begin to plant. Dark music, especially that filled with rebellion, lust, death, violence, and occult themes, is not just artistic expression. It is spiritual infiltration. Many of the artists behind these tracks openly confess to being influenced by dark forces. Some admit to meditating before writing, invoking spirits, channeling energy, or selling their souls for fame. And what is created in that space does not remain with the artist. It rides the music, and every time that music is played, that spirit enters the room. The lyrics may sound poetic, the beats may sound hypnotic, but what they carry is destructive. Words are seeds and music waters them. Repeated exposure becomes agreement, agreement becomes alignment. Alignment becomes access. It starts as background noise, then becomes an addiction. People can't sleep without music. They can't think in silence, but they never ask what spirit they're allowing to speak to them over and over again. Dark music is not limited to genre. It's not just about heavy metal or horrorcore. Even the most beautiful voice can carry the ugliest spirit. Some of the most dangerous songs are wrapped in soft tones and catchy hooks. But underneath it all, they glorify heartbreak, normalize perversion, promote self-destruction, or elevate ego above truth. That's not just expression, that's indoctrination. The spiritual world responds to sound. That's why praise invites presence. That's why chants call spirits. That's why ancient rituals always included drums, chants, and music. Sound builds atmospheres, and the wrong sound builds the wrong kind of atmosphere. One of confusion, one of heaviness, one of division, lust, rage, or despair. Have you ever noticed how a certain song can shift your entire mood in seconds? How after listening, thoughts become darker, energy feels drained, or temptations feel stronger? That's not coincidence. That's spiritual chemistry. Music is one of the few things that bypasses conscious resistance. It enters through rhythm and repetition. It lodges itself in memory. It loops in the background. And over time, it becomes normal, even if it's feeding the very battles you're trying to win. There are people who are spiritually stuck, not because of what they see, but because of what they hear. They can't find peace because their playlist is preaching confusion. They can't break cycles because the music they love is chaining them to the spirit they're trying to leave, and every time it plays, the cycle starts again, and it's not just the lyrics, it's the frequencies themselves. Certain tones, like binaural beats and low vibrational waves, are used in occult circles to induce altered states of consciousness. These frequencies are designed to open the mind and spirit to influence. When embedded in music, they do the same. They numb spiritual sensitivity and desensitize the heart to conviction. Cleaning out a house of cursed objects means nothing if the soundtrack remains cursed. The enemy doesn't care if you remove statues and symbols if he can still whisper through your headphones, because the sound that fills your ears eventually forms your thoughts, and your thoughts shape your life. This is not about legalism, it's about liberty. What you feed your soul matters. Music is a gate, and every gate leads somewhere. Some songs lead to peace, others to confusion. Some lift you into purpose. Others pull you into darkness. The question must be asked, what is your music opening you up to? Is it strengthening your spirit or weakening it? Is it aligning you with truth or seducing you into lies? Are you listening because it gives you life, or because you're addicted to what's draining you? There's no breakthrough without honesty. If the sound in your life is spiritually toxic, it must be silenced. Songs that glorify rebellion, violence, perversion, or occult themes must be deleted. Albums that were birthed in darkness must be thrown out. Frequencies that manipulate must be cut off, not just for a day, but permanently. Because deliverance doesn't happen until doors are shut, and sound is a major door. The music you allow is either a ladder into freedom or a leash into bondage. If you want peace, change the sound. If you want clarity, shift the atmosphere. Fill your environment with truth, with light, with sound that brings life, not decay, because when the sound changes, the spirit shifts, and when the spirit shifts, everything begins to transform. There is a growing trend wrapped in the language of healing, light, and self-discovery. It looks peaceful, harmless, even beautiful. Shelves filled with crystals, tables adorned with energy tools, incense burning next to stones labeled protection, love, or abundance. But beneath the surface of this seemingly gentle practice lies a spiritual trap, one that disguises witchcraft as wellness and deception as enlightenment. Crystals have existed for centuries, created by the Creator himself. As part of the earth, they were never evil in themselves, but their use in spiritual rituals and energy manipulation has corrupted their purpose. What once was natural has been turned into a spiritual weapon, one that millions unknowingly carry, wear, or place in their homes. The deception is subtle. This stone will help with anxiety. This crystal attracts love. Keep this near your bed to cleanse your aura. These phrases are common, accepted, and celebrated. But what's not spoken aloud is where these beliefs come from: ancient spiritual systems deeply rooted in sorcery, paganism, and energy worship. Systems that reject truth and replace it with counterfeit power. Power that does not come from light, but from manipulation of unseen forces. Crystals are not mere decorations in this practice. They are spiritual conduits. Each stone is believed to carry a specific vibration or frequency, said to align your energy field with your desires. But these frequencies are not powered by nature. They are often charged through rituals, moon phases, and spoken incantations. Some practitioners cleanse and program their crystals through sage, chants, or sound bath, acts that open spiritual doors and assign spirits to those objects. These rituals are not harmless. They are invitations. When a person places their trust in an object to bring healing, love, strength, or protection, they shift their faith away from divine authority and place it into created matter. That shift is the open door. It may seem small, it may seem innocent, but in the realm of the spirit, it is agreement, and agreement gives access. Many who carry or use crystals report strange patterns. Sudden mood swings, restless sleep, persistent fear or heaviness in the atmosphere, emotional instability, loss of clarity, increased sensitivity to spiritual pressure. Why? Because those stones were never meant to heal your soul. They were never meant to guide you. They are tools used in witchcraft to bypass spiritual truth and simulate control. But what begins as control often ends in torment, and it doesn't stop with the crystals. Alongside them come energy grids, pendulums, singing bowls, chakra charts, and manifestation boards. These tools are marketed as healing aids, but their foundation is spiritual rebellion, the belief that one can manipulate energy, destiny, and spiritual outcomes without alignment to truth. That's not healing, that's sorcery dressed in white robes and soft music. The language of alignment, vibration, and energy cleansing may sound scientific or therapeutic, but it is spiritual at its core. And every time someone participates in these practices, they are tuning their soul to a frequency that invites deception. It weakens discernment. It blurs the lines between light and darkness. It replaces truth with experience. And experience becomes the new idol. The presence of these objects in a home is not passive. It creates an atmosphere, one that often feels peaceful at first, but becomes spiritually heavy over time. Because false light is still darkness. And what may feel good to the flesh can be poison to the soul. People say it's just a stone, but it's never just a stone when it's used to replace spiritual truth. It becomes a carrier, a channel, and once a spirit is assigned to an object, that object becomes an agent of influence. It whispers lies, it distracts the heart, it seduces the soul, and it blocks the clarity needed to hear what is real. The most dangerous part is how normalized it has become. Social media is flooded with influencers showcasing their crystals, their moon rituals, their manifestations. It's seen as empowerment, especially for those who have been hurt or disillusioned. But empowerment without truth is deception with glitter, and deception, when embraced, always leads to spiritual bondage. Freedom doesn't come from stones. Healing doesn't come from energy charts. Love doesn't come from vibrations. These are imitations, mirages in a spiritual desert that offer refreshment but lead to deeper thirst. The soul was never designed to be healed by created things. It was made to be restored by truth. These tools must be removed, not stored, not passed on, destroyed. Crystals charged through rituals must be shattered. Energy tools, boards, bowls, and pendulums must be burned or discarded. Any object associated with energy healing, manifestation rituals, or chakra balancing must be thrown out immediately, because as long as they remain, so does the influence they carry. And once they are gone, a shift happens, the fog lifts, peace returns, sleep deepens, the soul breathes again, not because a stone was removed, but because the spirit behind it was evicted, and in that space, truth begins to reign. They sit quietly on shelves, hidden in drawers, displayed openly on coffee tables and altars. Some are ancient and worn, others are sleek, modern, and marketed as spiritual empowerment. They go by many names: spell books, oracle decks, tarot cards, astrology guides, horoscopes, moon journals. But beneath the packaging and poetic words lies a dangerous truth. These are not tools of insight. They are instruments of initiation. Books that teach spells, energy manipulation, spirit communication, or rituals are not harmless reading. They are spiritual manuals written with intention to transfer knowledge, yes, but more than that, to impart spiritual practices. These books don't just inform, they form. They plant ideas, shift perspectives, and slowly rewire the mind to accept what was once unthinkable. And by the time curiosity becomes daily practice, the soul is already entangled in something much deeper. Tarot cards are often introduced as simple tools for guidance or clarity. But tarot has never been innocent. Each card, each spread, each ritual reading is rooted in divination, an ancient practice designed to bypass divine truth and seek answers from spirits. These aren't just pretty pictures. They are spiritual symbols, often connected to archetypes that originated in occult philosophy, alchemy, and esoteric systems. Using them is not a game, it is a spiritual act, one that creates a conversation, and with every reading, the conversation deepens. People are lured in by a desire to know, to understand the future, to gain insight into relationships, money, purpose, pain. But what they don't realize is this: the moment someone consults a source outside of divine truth for direction, they step into the territory of the enemy. And the enemy is more than willing to speak. He gives just enough accuracy to keep people hooked, but always with a price. That price is subtle at first: spiritual dullness, confusion, restlessness, emotional instability. Then it grows: depression, torment, fear, even supernatural harassment. These objects open doors. That is not metaphor, it is reality. In spiritual law, certain practices act as invitations. Spell books and tarot decks are more than paper and ink, they are portals. Portals into realms where voices lie, visions twist, and deception reigns. And the deeper a person goes, the harder it becomes to hear truth, because spiritual darkness is not just an absence of light, it is a presence. A presence that works slowly, wrapping the mind in illusion until darkness feels like wisdom and rebellion feels like power. Horoscopes and astrology guides operate the same way. They teach people to follow stars instead of truth, to shape identity around signs instead of design. They lock souls into cycles, believing one's nature, destiny, or relationships are chained to the movement of planets. It seems harmless, but it's bondage dressed in stardust. These systems are not new, they are ancient tools of spiritual slavery, designed to keep people dependent on the cosmos while disconnected from clarity. The popularity of these tools has exploded. They're sold in bookstores, advertised on apps, promoted by influencers. People mix them into self-care routines and morning rituals, thinking it's all part of wellness and awareness. But this is how the deception spreads, not by force, but by fascination. Not through fear, but through curiosity. The oldest trap in the world still works. You can be like a god, knowing good and evil. That lie, whispered once in a garden, is now printed on glossy pages and shuffled into tarot decks. Once these objects are in a home, the spiritual atmosphere begins to change. Thoughts become heavier, prayer becomes harder, dreams become disturbed. Peace seems unreachable, and yet, the root goes unnoticed, because it's wrapped in light. But not all light is true light. Some light is false, designed to imitate truth while leading deeper into darkness. These objects must be removed, every spell book, every deck of tarot or oracle cards, every astrology manual, moon guide, or ritual journal. They are not collectible items, they are not conversation pieces. They are contracts, silent agreements that give spiritual forces access to influence the mind, emotions, and even health. Keeping them is not harmless. It is dangerous. They must not be sold. They must not be passed on. They must be destroyed, burn them, tear them, cleanse the space where they were kept, renounce the practices they taught, and break the agreement that was made, knowingly or unknowingly. Freedom begins where deception ends. And the moment these tools are removed, clarity returns. What was once confusing begins to make sense. What once felt heavy becomes light. Peace flows in, and the soul begins to hear truth again, because the spirit of truth does not compete for space with divination. One must be driven out for the other to dwell, and when the false is removed, the real can finally rise.